Introduce yourself.
Kent Williamson.
Kent joined me, not even reluctantly. I met him at the Mid-Con Energy Forum by Industry Collective. We're fortunate in our state to have a large amount of really great organizations that advocate for energy and oil and gas, and they all came together to, form a collective and say, hey, let's have an event together, and bring all the members together. So we met at the forum, and I heard about his book, and I really want you guys to grab his book for me and read it. I'm gonna, kind of play on. We've all been reading. There's a book called Boomtown, about Oklahoma City, and it gets people really excited about Oklahoma, our history, and our energy resources, and just how much oil and gas has not only contributed to our history, but will be, long into the future, just interwoven in every single thing we do. So thank you for what you've done.
Thank you. And thanks for having me on. And I just wanted to tell you I'm giving this book to Matt, and thanks for him having me on his video and so forth.
I love it. I get goosebumps. Everybody knows that I get the feels. So
it's a signed copy.
Yeah, this is good. Anytime I have you on, if you have a signed copy of your book or your manifesto, I'll take it. Before we started, obviously we have these long conversations as soon as we see each other. And I'm like, wait, we got to save some of this. But tell us a little bit about what you know about where we're at right now.
So when Matt called to get together today, do a quick interview,
I crowbarred you pretty quick.
Yeah, well, I thought, well, this is a good spot in Tulsa. So, a lot of people know that Oklahoma has a lot of hydrocarbon history. So my book is American Heat Engine, Hydrocarbons and the Power of the United States. And it's a history of hydrocarbons, coal, oil, and natural gas in the United States. And we all know that Oklahoma has a lot of history for hydrocarbons. It's most well known for oil and natural gas. So Tulsa is known as the oil capital of the world, and there's still a lot of oil and natural gas production. But Oklahoma also has a lot of coal. So I chose this area because there is a ton of history here. We're right by downtown Tulsa, and then we're right across the Arkansas River from some active refineries. So it's actually technically one refinery, but it's connected by a pipeline. It's owned by H.F. Sinclair. These refineries go back to over 100 years here in Tulsa. And then across the river is where the Sue Bland number 1 well was in 1901. And that's the well that really got Tulsa going as an oil town. And then further down across the river is Glenpool, which in 1905 was a huge strike. And that changed American hydrocarbon history, because you'd had the Gulf Coast oil strike at Spindletop in 1901.
Yep.
But that oil was starting to go out. And so companies like Texaco and Gulf were looking for new oil reserves, and Glenpool was perfect. It was actually better oil for gasoline, which was growing in demand. The automobile was pretty new. So Glenpool is really what got Tulsa going. And then we're standing by this bridge, and that's a bridge, the 11th Street Bridge, which was part of Route 66. That was built in 1916-17. But before that, there was a wooden toll bridge right around here that some local Tulsa businessmen built in order to connect Tulsa to the oil fields across the river. And they built it with their own money. And that basically put Tulsa on the map, and that got things going. Of course, this bridge was instrumental in getting Route 66 run through Tulsa and Oklahoma in 1926. And the man right here, this sculpture, is Cyrus Avery. He's known as the father of Route 66. He was a local Tulsa businessman. He was actually an oil man, but he was in a lot of other businesses. And he became a civic leader, and he foresaw the importance of highways and automobiles. And he was kind of the driving force in getting Highway 66 run through Tulsa. And of course, Highway 66, or Route 66, is the iconic American highway that runs from Chicago to Los Angeles.
We feel in Oklahoma like we are Route 66 in a lot of ways, right?
So, and
it's ours.
You can still drive, this is the modern bridge here, Southwest Boulevard, and you can still drive on Oklahoma Highway 66 down to Oklahoma City. And if you go through some of these little towns, it's cool because you see the old style gas stations.
Many trips up
and all that stuff. So yeah, tons of history. And then finally coal. Even Oklahoma has coal, but there's a coal seam that starts down south of Glenpool, and it runs across the river. But up north of Tulsa, close to the airport, is where the outcrops were and the shallow deposits. And so there was actually coal mining in the late 1800s and the 1880s up there. And one area where they mined coal was Expo Square, which is where our convention center, it was an old site of the International Petroleum Exposition for many years during the 1900s. And ironically, the reason Expo Square is there partially is because there was a lot of coal mining there, so they didn't want to put neighborhoods there, so they made it an open area. So pretty cool.
And we have the Golden Driller there.
Yes, now the Golden Driller, who's iconic
everywhere. Everybody recognizes where that's at.
So he's standing on old coal mining land. So.
Good for him. Energy wherever it comes from.
So.
Well, thank you for this book. What else can we find in here that you just absolutely love?
Well, it's like I said, it's a general history of hydrocarbons in the United States. So it starts from the beginning, even before there was the United States, and comes all the way to the present. And I even take a little bit of a glance into the future. I'm not forecasting or prognosticating. But
you might be our oracle. You never know.
So, but my main goal was to. I think it's a fascinating story.
Yeah.
And kind of what happened is I got into the industry kind of mid-career.
I was wondering, where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in Colorado.
Okay.
And of course, Denver is an oil town as well. But my family was not directly involved in the oil. I had some family members that were involved. I wasn't totally ignorant, but I took a lot of it for granted. And then I served in the military for a number of years in the Marines. But I ended up back here in Tulsa. My wife happens to be from Tulsa. And I ended up eventually getting a job with a company called IHS here in Tulsa. They acquired a small geology software company here in Tulsa. And
motorcycles.
Somehow I got hired on as a product manager in 2007.
Not somehow, you got this skill set.
And little did I know, I was at ground zero or front row seat for the shale revolution. So right then is when, of course, the Barnett was going full bore. And the Haynesville was just taking off, the Fayetteville. Marcellus was still just barely registering. But then in a few years after, of course, the oil plays, like the Eagle Ford, the Permian, the Bakken, started taking off, and our software was used for it all. So I spent about 15 years with IHS Market, and then we got acquired by S&P Global. And I learned all about energy. We had a coal group. I learned about refining, petrochemicals, and all that. And I was like, this stuff is really interesting. And then I looked back on my American history books that I had, and I was like, it's not really covered that much in our history. They'll talk about Rockefeller and Standard Oil and coal mining and maybe the energy crises and that kind of the Middle East, but I was like, it's not really covered. And so I ended up having the opportunity to write this book a few years ago.
With some reverence as well. I mean, you can tell, right? Like there's a lot of passion and advocacy in your voice that comes through this.
So I just wanted to share the story. I think it's an important story. And so I also wanted to make it kind of interesting. And, I don't think people realize, I didn't, how integral hydrocarbons are to what the United States has become. So
our security.
You learn in history, it's because we have a lot of natural resources, which are true, and hydrocarbons are major natural resources. So I try to weave that in there, and how important they've been to the economic, the industrial, and ultimately the military power of the United States. And in my opinion, I'm very patriotic.
Amen.
I love this country, and in my opinion, I think the United States has been a force for good in the world.
Absolutely.
We're not perfect by any means, but I think we're better than the alternatives. And like it or not, our military power has been integral in defeating a lot of malign influences in the world and keeping the peace,
saving lives.
So, and hydrocarbons have a ton to do with that. So if you read the book, you'll see all of that.
You have abundant, reliable energy to go out and spread goodwill all day long.
But ultimately, the American people are the real reason this country is so strong, and that's awesome. But what you'll also find out in this book is the people were energized in a lot of ways by hydrocarbons. So everything from lamp fuel, so the early petroleum industry, but coal. So coal replaced wood in people's stoves and in lighting applications, so gas lights. Before there was electricity, coal, of course, was used for electrical generating fuel, still is today. Coal is used in steel production, iron and steel production, which built this country and builds modern civilization. And then natural gas came in later, heating and cooking fuel, and of power generation, petrochemicals, plastics. I cover all of that. So it's made hydrocarbons are essential to modern civilization, and they've really benefited Americans and contributed to our economic and industrial strength.
One thing that philosophers like Alex Epstein, or something that always hit with me that he said was, without that affordable and reliable and abundant energy, guys like you and I would not have even the time to remotely consider our hobbies and our passions to do what we love, for me to get this equipment, come out and meet you out here, or you to have the time to even think about writing this book, much less carry it out, because you would be toiling away all day long for your food, your shelter, your clothing, and anything else you wanted to do. There's nothing it doesn't touch, his energy.
Yeah, and I've read his book, The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels, and the newer one as well. And so that was actually an influence, and that's part of how Fossil Future. I wrote this book, so it does talk about some of the drawbacks, but it's focused on the positives. Yeah. And that's intentional. It's not meaning that I'm ignoring all the bad effects of hydrocarbons, or I'm naive or whatever. I just so part of what Alex Epstein advocates for is, he was a philosophy major, and so it's thinking, framing your thoughts, and he points out that hydrocarbons, a lot of people focus so much on the drawbacks and the negative effects, they lose sight of the vast, the vast amount.
30,000 foot view. Yeah, look at the
positives.
Hockey stick positives.
So, and you mentioned, we wouldn't be able to write books and do this stuff, and I always like to mention to people, one of the areas that hydrocarbons really improve people's lives in early, 150, 200 years ago, was illumination. So if you think about it, that for most of human history, when the sun went down, there was no light. In a northern latitude in the winter, it can be dark for 12 hours a day or even more. And you think about it, you may have a little wood fire in your fireplace, but I don't know, you may remember the stories of Abraham Lincoln reading by candlelight. Yeah. He educated himself by, he had the motivation to read by candlelight, which is tough. But what a lot of people don't realize is candles were actually pretty expensive. Yeah. Not everyone could afford them. So a lot of people, when the sun went down, their world just plunged into darkness. So you couldn't do anything other than sleep or whatever.
They were tougher than us.
Or you could talk or just sit in the dark, whatever. But hydrocarbons, with the light they provided, it expanded the human day, beyond the daylight hours, and that has given humans
global prosperity. Says it right here.
The ability to think and do creative things past their working hours or whatever. So really interesting.
So right now, just your thoughts, because I always like to get people thinking out there. What are we doing right now as an industry that you're excited about? But also, like you said, where do you think we're going to go?
So that's what I mentioned when I started in 2007. It was right at the beginning of the shale revolution. At that point, it was mostly natural gas, and then it moved to oil. And I moved up to Denver, where our headquarters was, and we had acquired these chemical consulting companies, and I learned all about that industry and how it was basically dying in the United States, Gulf Coast and other areas. There was. The chemical industry was losing competitiveness, and they were moving production overseas. Yeah. And the fact that we got cheap natural gas and NGLs, natural gas liquids, reinvigorated our industry here. And so now they're moving things back. So that and cheap natural gas and electricity, generated primarily from natural gas and coal, has benefited our industry, so allowed some of our industries to reindustrialize. Yep. And so that part of it, and now we're seeing, of course, the data centers and AI and all that.
We want to attract data centers to Oklahoma for sure. We have a great molecule in natural gas. I hope that we're all reaching out to everybody that's creating a data center and putting that seed in their thoughts. Like, hey, have you thought about natural gas? We can drill a well, put a generator on site. It'll take whatever gas comes out of that wellhead and give you all the energy. Even if you want to put between the generator and your data center a BESS system, so at least you get clean amperage. But it's all there for the taking now. And we have land, we have people that want to go to work. I'm so excited for Oklahoma. It's going to be great.
I mean, that's important. It takes a lot of electricity, though. So
our electricity, right? I mean, you've probably seen all the data I've seen. Like in the next 10 years, I mean, we need to rebuild or create new microgrids or infrastructure. In 10 years, our energy demand is going to at least double. So we need to really be ready within the next 5 years, because it could happen quicker than we think.
So, and that's what another thing I kind of tried to make the point with this book is it's not it focuses on hydrocarbons, of course. It's not a diatribe against other forms of energy.
We talk energy addition.
I focus on hydrocarbons because the fact of the matter is they've been the primary source of energy and other feedstocks for a long time, and they continue to be. I think they will for the foreseeable future. I don't know what the future holds, but it's clear that we can't generate the amount of electricity we're going to need. We can't make petrochemicals without hydrocarbons. We can't make steel without hydrocarbons, and a lot of other things. So we're going to need them. And the good news is we have a lot of them here in the United States, and I think we produce them more efficiently and responsibly than most other areas in the world.
Do.
And then some of our closest allies, like Canada, they have even more than we do, like oil. We have a great connection with them through infrastructure. And then another job I had was research for refining and marketing Latin America.
Our 51st state, by the way, up north.
So I've been up there many times, and it's a great relationship because they're heavy sour crude. Our refineries in the 70s and 80s had to retool because our light sweet crude production was going down. So they retooled to be able to process heavy sour from, at the time, mainly Latin America, Venezuela, Mexico, Colombia. But by far our largest import source now is Canada. It's like 4 million barrels a day. And I'd rather import from Canada than from the Middle East or some of the other areas of the world.
I'd rather refine it here, and regulatory, and it's going to take a while to build a new refinery. Even if all the things open up, like, okay, let's start building refineries again, it's going to take a little bit.
Well, the refineries these days, so it's really more of a rationalization in the United States. So it's more smaller refineries that are isolated markets or isolated from good supplies.
State to state would be fine.
And then there are even some on the Gulf Coast that are smaller, that are not competitive. It's moving towards larger, huge, very complex refineries. So much like a lot of other industries. So
man, I'm so excited. I'm excited for our children and their children, because we're going to hand off something that's really reliable for them, and like all they have to do is be interested, and they'll be able to take care of it, and we'll be able to keep the lights on.
Yes, and you asked about the future, and I don't pretend to know what the future is. And if you read the book, you'll see that there's been a lot of predictions on where things are going. That most of them are wrong.
I predict every day.
But I think in general, natural gas and natural gas liquids have probably the brightest future, because we have so much of it, and it's relatively cleaner. Now you have to have a lot of infrastructure, though. You have to have a lot of pipelines, and there's can be issues with that. I think oil, we have a lot of oil, but it seems like some of the oil shale plays, there's starting to be some questions on how much longer they're going to go. We still have a lot of offshore oil that we haven't touched, and a lot in Alaska, so there's plenty of that. But there's also interesting technology on petrochemicals about crude to chemicals technology. Basically, instead of refining things into naphtha first, which is a petrochemical feedstock, just going directly to chemicals. So we'll see where that goes. Natural gas.
Come on in, chemistry majors. We need you.
But the natural gas side, of course, the big tantalizing source out there is the methane hydrates. So we'll see where that goes. On the oil side, we have the oil shale, which it's not the same thing as shale from the unconventional plays. It's actually out in western Colorado and in Utah, southwestern Wyoming. And I remember as a kid growing up in Denver, after the energy crisis in the 70s, they did a bunch of research. And of course, there was Exxon and other big companies were out there near Grand Junction. But then when the oil prices crashed in the 80s...
I lived in the Piceance for quite a while.
So that all went away. But it's still out there. We have by far the largest...
It's being reinvigorated as we speak.
And then coal, I mentioned, coal seems to be the dimmest future because it seems to be the hydrocarbon everyone loves to hate. I call it a tragic hero.
Yeah, okay.
But it's still being used, it still generates about 15% of our electricity. And, I don't know, I think there's something comforting about having a big pile of coal by the power plant.
It's
right there. And we have more coal than we have natural gas or oil. And we can produce it responsibly and use it.
Speaking of Denver, it's funny because sometimes you'll run across somebody who doesn't quite know. Everybody always asks, hey, what do you do? And I've had friends go, hey, don't mention you're in oil and gas, up here, whatever. But there was a driver one time, and he's like, oh, and it kind of offended, what I worked in. But it was a comfortable conversation. I was like, what strikes me is if you leave Denver and head north along the train tracks, to head up to, all that kind of area that we live in, all you see is coming from the north to the south toward Denver is rail car after rail car after rail car. As far as I can see, coal.
Yeah.
So
Powder River Basin.
Yeah,
coal.
I think you're enjoying a pretty great life in Denver because of coal.
Yeah, there's plenty of that. And then I point out where I grew up southwest of Denver, it was actually near Coal Mine Road. And I never really thought about that, but there actually were old coal mines out just to the west of where my subdivision was. And, like Expo Square here, there's a golf course that I grew up playing on that was put there because there were subsidence from these old coal mines back in the early 1900s. So yeah, there's coal everywhere. And the other interesting thing about coal, I know on the future side of things is, of course it's still necessary coking coal for steel, so forth. But one of the earliest uses of coal was for gas lighting. But when you burn the coal, there'd be coal tar and other stuff left over. And that was actually one of the sources of the early petrochemical industry. Dyes and things like that came out of coal tar. Now it's more used, chemicals are more derived from NGLs and naphtha. But I'm seeing some interesting companies and reports of people going back towards coal and doing different techniques, industrial processes in extracting resources. So even coal ash, much like some of the brines and stuff from oil production, there's a lot of rare earth, lithium and rare earth type stuff that can be extracted from those, and perhaps coal will go back in that direction as it fades away.
It's one of the things I absolutely love about our industry is I think we are environmentalists at heart, because we want to, and it's also we're environmentalists, but we're also financially responsible, and we know that both can be true at the same time. If I'm environmentally irresponsible, I'm also financially irresponsible, because every possible thing I can harvest from that natural resource, why wouldn't I take the time and find that solution and engineer a way to utilize, that resource and that product. And that's why, like, hey, we know, we see our own black eyes and we want to solve them ourselves. You don't need to regulate it. You don't need to throw another program at it. We got this. We know it's already on our minds to try to fix that.
Yeah, and I, in the book, I point out, the environmental effects, both good and bad. There's obviously been bad things. A lot of it was because people didn't understand, years ago.
Learning.
But I also point out some of the positive effects hydrocarbons have had on the environment. And a couple examples, coal went a long ways towards restoring a lot of our forests, especially in the eastern United States, because forests were cut down for agriculture. They're also cut down for wood for stoves and steam engines, and for making charcoal for iron and steel production. So coal enabled that. And then, of course, the more famous story is oil saved the whales, because lamp oil, originally there was different fuels for it. One was camphene, which came from turpentine, and that was cheap, but it was very dangerous. It exploded and caught fire a lot. And then whale oil was premium fuel. It was very good. It was also very expensive, but producing whale oil meant killing whales, and whales were hunted almost to extinction in the 1800s. And petroleum changed all that, because kerosene from petroleum in the last 40 years of the 1800s completely killed the whale oil industry. So, and there's other examples I could cite, but I cover a few of them. So it's not all bad. There's a lot of good. One other one I'd point out is for human flourishing, nitrogen fertilizers, which
we feed the world now because
derived from hydrocarbons.
Yep.
And yes, we wouldn't be able to feed our population without them, but it also increases crop yield, so it reduces the amount of land that you have to use for farms and allows more trees to grow.
Breaking down everything into oxygen and nitrogen, all of a sudden your plants are thriving. Like, oh, I can go out and feed a lot more people. Crazy.
Yeah.
Man, Kent, thank you so much. I get goosebumps, when I meet people that, just have this passion. So thank you for what you do. Please go out and get American Heat Engine, Hydrocarbons, and the Power of the United States. Good read. It'll inspire you. And do your best to go out and, maybe, hey, buy a friend another one too. How about that?
And it's on Amazon right now in paperback and ebook. I don't have an audiobook yet, but I know a lot of people have asked me for it.
I already told you how to set up these microphones. Now it's easy.
I need to do that. So, but anyway, definitely, if you're interested, and I'd like to point out, it's not like an encyclopedia or a textbook. It's only about 300 pages, and I tried to write it in a way that's understandable even for people that aren't in the industry.
It's a love story.
Yes. And I've been told by multiple people that have read it that I succeeded in that. So don't be intimidated. It's not a boring read.
You got to go get it. All right. I'm going to get him out of here. He's sweated in this summer sun with me long enough.
Thankfully, a little cloud cover today.
God bless you.
Same to you, Matt.
You all
Thank you.
take care. God bless. We'll see you next time. Bye.